Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for today's card I am using some brand new waffle flower stamps and dies. I'm starting with this new Flower Girl stamp set. They have a new illustrator and this is the first new set. I'm really excited to see what the future sets are going to bring because this is just the cutest little stamp set. I just love it. So there's this little flower girl and there's all these like extra stamps to add color and whatnot to her. You can keep it a lot simpler than what I do here by just stamping the little girl, and then you can stamp the flowers in color and whatnot. But I wanted to do some heat embossing. So I have just some Bristol smooth cardstock. I had already die cut it with the outline die for this little character, only because I wanted to make sure I lined up the flowers in the proper spot. But then after I actually started stamping, I realized it's even simpler than I thought it would be to line everything up. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to like stamp the flowers in the right spot, but the way the stamp is designed, there's the little like vine area of her dress, and then there's all these kind of dots at the bottom, and the dots are the flower centers. So you just need to line up the flower stamp. Like, it's all thought out. Sometimes I way overthink things, and especially with waffle flower things, they're already like, everything's already thought out and done to make it as easy as possible. So I had pre-die cut, but yeah, I could have just stamped everything, been done with it, then die cut it, but whatever works. This also works though if you have like solid dies that you can't see through, is to die cut them first like this, and then you can line things up and use your MISTI, etc. So I lined everything back up. I had stamped the girl image with VersaFine, Clair, Nocturne ink. I did not clear heat emboss it. I was going to, but then I decided I didn't want the clear heat embossing on that because I wanted the main part of the image to just be stamped in black, because I wanted heat embossing obviously to be the flowers, and I didn't want anything else like kind of competing with that. So I'd stamped the flowers with clear embossing ink, and then I'm using the new Ranger Speckle lavender embossing powder that I just showed in my last haul video. So that was also why I kind of went the extra work of fiddling around and doing the embossing, because I thought that would be so pretty. And my camera doesn't do it justice. In real life, it's just the prettiest shade of purple. So I had tried to make sure that the VersaFine Clair ink was really dry. Like, I used my heat tool in that because especially on Bristol smooth cardstock, it takes a while to dry. But when I stamped the flowers and poured on the emboss powder, like some of the little vine areas did pick it up, but I brushed those off with my paintbrush and then heated it and we're good to go. So in this set, there's also little solid stamps like for the top of her dresser, like for her like shirt basically. There's even these funny little like half circle stamps that for a second I wasn't sure, and then I realized those are for her cheeks. Like, again, everything's thought out. There's all these extra little bits and pieces that so you can just stamp everything. You don't really need to color. You could leave it even just like this, you know, not do any coloring. But I can't leave well enough alone, so I'm going to do that. But I'll get to that in a second. I wanted to do her wings as well because, again, they're just so cute. So there's an outline and a solid, and they're already spaced. Everything's done for you. So I stamped the outline with the VersaFine Clair and then dried that. And then used my anti-static powder tool, and then I stamped the solid wings right over top. And then coated these with that same lavender speckle embossing powder. Melted that with my heat tool. And then I will die cut those with the coordinating wafer die in a minute. So for the coloring of this image, I'm just going to use more Distress Oxide colors. I used the shaded lilac to stamp her the top of her dress with that little solid stamp. And then for her skin, I'm using Tattered Rose and Vintage Photo. I'm mixing up using the Tattered Rose and then adding the teeniest bit of Vintage Photo just to give it a more sort of skin tone look, because the Tattered Rose is extremely pale. So just adding a little bit to that. And then I'm just going to keep using the Vintage Photo just to paint her hair. Keeping this really simple. Like I said, you don't need to color, so you could just leave it and it'd be very clean and simple and graphic, and the florals would kind of stand out. But then you could also just add color and don't have to go to a whole lot of like effort because it's all kind of done for you, you know. all of the, you know, detail and those little flowers. Like, I think your dress is just the cutest thing ever. So I pulled out peeled paint, Distress Oxide ink, to paint like the base of her dress, aka the little vines. And painted all that along, and I'm just using my little Tim Holtz detail water brush. That's also why I had originally stamped this onto Bristol Smooth cardstock, because it's just quick and easy, and I can paint it, don't have to worry about it. So I got everything painted, let it dry, die cut her little wings. That's, like I said, they were spaced apart, all done. So all I have to do is add a little bit of adhesive to that center area, then pop them into place. And she's completely done. So I wanted to have sort of a little bit of a background to frame her on. So I pulled out the A2 layers dies and chose a die that I wanted to use. And then I just grabbed a scrap of Bristol Smooth cardstock that just happened to be the perfect size. So I'm just going to hold the die in place just to give me kind of a visual, because I want to paint my little bit of a background, but I don't want to go up to the edges. So I squished on the shaded lilac oxide ink again. And then I'm just picking this up with a water brush and adding some water, and then just painting this onto the Bristol Smooth cardstock. I don't want it to be even. I don't want it to be perfect. I just want to get that color down to give a little bit of a background to my little fairy person. So painted that on. Once I was happy with it, I can quickly dry this with my heat tool. Once it's dry, I'm going to run this through my die cut machine with that rectangle wafer die. So really easy, really quick, and it just kind of pulls in more of that like purple color as well. So once I've got that dry and then die cut, I'm going to tape the die into place first with some washi tape so that it doesn't move. Because again, like this piece of cardstock was just the right size. So I want to make sure that doesn't move and end up being, you know, all wonky. So tape that into place, run it through my die cut machine. And then I was originally going to stamp a sentiment on that, but I'll get to that in a second. There's also this new set that's just been released. This is the Poppy Hawthorn stamp set, which of course I love because it's a large floral image. So I wanted to try and get that, you know, get some use on that with this card as well. So I decided I was just going to stamp this onto my card base with just black ink, keeping it very simple. I'm not going to color it because I want my little, you know, fairy girl to be like the focus of this card. So I did some fiddling to kind of line up this image because it's a large floral, but it's not super large. So I decided I just got it into place and I only inked up kind of the lower portion of it to stamp on the lower corner here of my card front. The middle is irrelevant because it's going to get covered up, so I don't worry about it being perfect at all. And then I'm going to clean off my stamp, and then I'm going to position it again so I can kind of stamp that same area, because I really liked how that looked, on the upper right portion now of this card base. So again, a little bit of fiddling, but still like pretty basic. So I got everything lined up a second time. Once I was happy with that, closed the lid of my MISTI, and then I'm going to stamp it again with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, not worrying about the center because it's going to get covered up. So after I got that stamped on the outside, I'm going to clean off my stamp another time, and then I'm going to stamp this on the inside of the card because the inside needs something. Inside always needs to have something. So I'm just going to flip my card base over and then line up this stamp one more time, and I'm going to stamp this with that shaded lilac Distress Oxide ink just to tie it all together. So inked it up with that ink, stamped that onto the inside of the card, and then for the sentiment for this card, there's a couple that come with the little flower girl set. You can kind of make a little birthday card or just a hello card. But I really like the sentiments that come in the Poppy Hawthorn set. So I pulled out the thank you sentiment. And at first I was going to try and stamp it onto that little panel, but I didn't like how that was going to, you know, look, just the size of the sentiment and the size of the girl. So instead, I'm going to white heat emboss this onto just a scrap of black cardstock. And I'm actually going to stamp it twice because there's coordinating wafer dies for these sentiments in this set. And the neat thing about them is they're individual dies. It's not going to cut out the entire thank you word. It's going to cut out just the thank and just the you, which I thought was kind of cool. So I stamped it twice so that way I can just die cut it in one pass rather than die cut one word and then reline up the second one and die cut it a second time. And then by doing that, I actually end up with 2 more words left over, like another thank you that I can use on a future card. And I can just keep that with the stamp set. So after I had melted the embossing powder, lined up those wafer dies, die cut them, and then to start assembling this card, I'm going to coat the back of the little watercolor panel with some Big Mama foam tape from Simon Says Stamp. I just cut it apart with my Tim Holtz paper snips. And after I get the foam tape in place, peel off the backing, then I can line this up onto my card front, press that into place. And then my little fairy girl, I'm just going to adhere into place with some craft tacky glue. And once that's adhered, I'm also going to adhere the thank you sentiment, just kind of along the bottom there. I positioned her a little bit higher so I could adhere the thank you words. And then once those are adhered, my final little bit of embellishment is these little Studio Katia iridescent butterflies that I also showed in my last haul video, since I've got all these like random new goodies sitting here. I thought those would go perfectly with this card, the colors, just everything. So I sprinkled these, you know, on this little card front here. And then once I was happy with where they were, I'm just going to adhere them into place with more of the craft tacky glue, just picking them up with my little jewel picker and then putting down just little tiny dabs of glue, because these are just the tiniest little embellishments. They're so cute. So yeah, put down the glue, press a little crystal into it, and then they're good to go. So that's going to finish off this card. As always, there will be a link below my video to my blog post, and there will be a supply list with links to all the supplies I used. And this is also part of a blog hop, so there is a giveaway and links to other participants and tons of inspiration for this release. So all that info will be in my blog post. You can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!